can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. I am joined today by a very special guest. You may know of him from across a lot of various different things. Been a fixture of The Daily Show all the way up to being its head writer. You've had a long history in stand-up comedy and just comedy in general. And while I feel like this was actually news to me, but you've been writing comics for a while as well. But Elliott Kalan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for having me in the cave. I appreciate it. I've been looking forward to it. But yeah, I'm most of my career has been in comedy, has been in television for the most part, but I've loved comic books since I was a kid. I've been a dedicated comic book reader since I can pinpoint it back to 1992. And before then, I was a casual comic book reader. And then 1992 is when I became when it took over my life for a long time. And I just love working in it. I've been writing for a bunch of different publishers for years, and I'm excited to be writing this Hercules series that we're talking about now because it's a nice kind of long run that I'm working on right now. It's a real kind of like 12-issue run that I can have fun with doing different types of stories and build them all into one big epic, which is something I haven't had the chance to do in comics too much before, since I've been mostly writing single issues here and there, or miniseries, or short stories. Now, finally, I'm on the big stage. I'm on the many issues stage. It's exciting.
Well, that was the thing I was even going to ask about too, is because and this is just a testament to Dynamite, but like. Because you do like Marvel and DC stuff. A lot of times you work on a series, kind of like what you said. You either do like a one shot, or Marvel and DC both are kind of been moving more towards like shorter, like maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6-issue series. So that was something I was actually curious about. Was this going to be something like if you're going to do like 5 issues or 6 or 7? But you say so it's going to be like a 12-issue series for Hercules.
That was what they asked me to do, and that's how I've been planning it. And I mean, there's always comic books it's a difficult world. Nothing's guaranteed in this world, especially not with comics. So I guess there's always the chance that not enough people show up, and it doesn't get all the way to the end. But I hope they do. And as far as I know, I'm thinking of this as it's going to be a real good, meaty kind of run of a story, that the first kind of 4 or 5 issues are both individual kind of one-issue stories, but also they're all contributing to this larger mystery story that will hit its first climax in the 6th issue. And then Hercules will have to face the consequences of what happens in that issue, and then kind of come back to having hopefully an ultimate victory. Will Hercules win in the end? Who knows? We'll see. It's possible, I suppose. But
does anyone ever truly win?
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. I forget who it was who said that the important thing in a story is knowing when to end it, because in reality, all stories end in tragedy eventually, if you follow them long enough. Yeah. But this one, in my mind, there's part of me that's thinking how to do a story that has the same kind of scope and feel that in many ways the movie does, and the same kind of emotional heft to it, but cut up into issues so that when you're reading the issues, it doesn't feel like I'm only reading chapter 3 of 12 or something like that, but instead feels like, oh, I got a story in this issue, but also I've got the next steps forward in this larger tale, and that larger tale will kind of come more and more to the forefront, and in the second half of the way I'm planning it, it is more overtly kind of one long story, but still with individual adventures going on within it. This all sounds very vague and abstract, possibly, but the way that the comic books that I grew up reading, I was a big diehard Marvel zombie as a kid, and it was very exciting when you read a book that was a contained story that also it flowed from the last issue and it flowed into the next issue. And there was always something really exciting to me of those issues that were building up a story, because they almost always end up with just a big fight, and kind of mostly what's going to happen. But it's seeing those threads coming together and seeing characters being introduced and seeing characters developed, and having so much space for the series means that I can also let the supporting characters have their moments to shine. It's a Hercules book, but the characters from the movie are all in there. His Meg, his love of his life, and Phil, his mentor, and the gods that he has this kind of strange relationship with because they're his family, but they also kind of look down on him because he's immortal. He's chosen not to be a god, and they don't really fully understand that decision. In the first issue, Zeus is like, I thought it would be a phase. Like, I thought this was the thing you were going through. And to be able to really give those characters their own kind of moments and stories and emotional arcs is the exciting thing about having such a big canvas to play on, as opposed to the previous series I did for Dynamite and with these characters, the Hades miniseries, Disney Villains Hades, which was 5 issues, which meant that I said, okay, in 5 issues, this is just going to be like kind of nonstop adventure and action, and the characters will have little beats and moments and things like that. But Hades is a character who does not. There's no emotional changing for him. He's just a bad guy who stays a bad guy. But it meant that I could go, okay, I'm just going to floor it and just hit the accelerator for the entirety of the series. Whereas with Hercules, these characters, they have their moments. They get to be human beings with emotions and things like that. So I've been having such a fun time writing it, and Dynamite and Disney have both been super supportive of what I'm doing with it and what I'm planning. So I hope that readers pick it up and that they enjoy it also, and that they come along with us for this ride, this epic. I'll call it an epic adventure. I'll call it the most epic adventure since the original Hercules stories, which is a long time ago.
That's a lot of that's a lot of time between them.
It's a lot of time to cover. Yeah, it's a big boast. It's a big, probably not accurate boast, but I'm going to make it anyway. It's the best story since Hercules was called Heracles. That's what I'll say. That's the quote. Yeah.
You know what? That needs to be. You always get the the quotes on like the back of the box or the front of the box. It's like, that needs that. Yeah, the greatest epic since Hercules was called Heracles. I think I think that might need to go into the marketing.
Okay, I hope so. the writer of a series is allowed to be quoted as a blurb on the series, right? There's nothing unethical about that.
We'll just make it up. We'll say we'll make up some name. It'll who's gonna fact check that? Probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody.
Nobody.
Probably. I don't know.
Actually, yeah. Well, that's especially in comics. In comics, and because I feel this way too. Often I'm like, this isn't exactly accurate, and it's been bothering me the whole time that it's set in ancient Greece, but everyone calls him Hercules. I'm like, they should be calling him Heracles. And George, my artist on it, he's Greek, and I'm always like, I hope he's just not mad that we keep calling him Hercules instead of Heracles. But that's just he's better known that way. So the other Greek characters, they all have their Greek names. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I was gonna say too, just for me as a person who is really interested in stuff like Greek mythology and grew up like being probably almost obsessively interested in it. It is something that always kind of struck me as odd, but like it's one of those things like and I guess this is something that comes with age. As I've gotten older, I feel like I care less about some things that normally like before I would be like, ooh, and now I'm just kind of like,
one of the nice, very much so. One of the nice things that comes with maturity is I no longer correct people if they say Frankenstein instead of Frankenstein's monster. You know what? We all know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
it's fine. We don't need to. But certainly, I was that kid through Guy in my 20s too, who was like, this thing is not exactly right. So let me point out, and it wasn't until I was in my 20s I realized, people don't enjoy being corrected. Like nobody has ever said to me, I should be saying Frankenstein's monster. Thank you. I appreciate that. I won't make that mistake. Everyone just gets mad. They just look at you like. So
I empathize with that. I empathize. I used to be that guy that I would ruin entertainment sometimes for my loved ones because I was like, well, in the book, well, in the original book it actually went this way, or well, in the original TV series they didn't do this.
I feel like it is a mark of my maturity that I can talk to people about the Dune movies without being like, well, they really, Thufir Hawat has an entire storyline that they cut out and that it doesn't need to be mentioned. Nobody cares. It doesn't help at all. You know.
Nah, but that is something that, as far as like, for entertainment purposes go, like I can definitely say that going into something and just enjoying it just for the fun that it provides,
Hmm.
I will definitely say, as a person who, I actually thought about this when we were setting this up. I was like, I haven't watched Hercules since, I was like, it's probably been a decade almost or
Really?
so maybe. And like I was sitting there thinking about, I was like, I wonder if I should go back and watch it just to make sure that like I'm not misremembering anything. But then like I just picked it up, I just picked up issue one. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna read it. I was like, it's not gonna matter. And I was like, yeah, I was like, I'm just having fun with this. Like it's like I'm getting into it. It's cute, it's fun. The characters act in the
I'm
way
so
that I remember that they act.
I'm so glad that you felt that way. Once I apologize. I just heard a knock on the door, and I just want to double check what
Oh
that is.
yeah,
I
yeah, go
apologize.
ahead, yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that.
Oh no, you're okay.
Dynamite sent me like a case of like number ones to sign, I guess, for Dynamic Forces to sell, and the guy, that was the guy coming to pick him up, and I wanted to make sure not to miss him. And he's like, didn't I just drop this off like 2 days ago? And I'm like, yeah, there's a comic books that to sign. And he was like, you write comic books? And that turns out the UPS guy, huge comic book fan, huge Disney fan. So I left this interview to like one-on-one retail sell him on Hercules and the Hades miniseries, like a politician, like I'm running for president or something, you know?
Well, I mean, that is in and of itself an interesting interaction, just because how often does that ever happen? Like
Oh
that
yeah.
you get to like, like, and organically, oh hey, you're this fan of this, this body of things. Well, guess what? It just so happens. It's like that doesn't that's like I don't know, that's like I feel like that's at least a 1 or 2 in a million.
Yeah, it's very, very. I was very surprised. So I was like, I got to get back to this interview, but I also want to like make sure this guy knows about this thing. You never know. I'm never gonna get this chance again. But now I'm back, and there's nothing else that should interrupt for a little bit. Yeah.
You're okay. Just that alone, I mean, I guess this kind of speaks to what I was mentioning earlier, was just the enthusiasm and fun and energy that I can already kind of clearly tell you're having writing the story. Like, it comes out
Oh, good.
through the just through what you're doing in the story as is. Like, it's fun. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like it's trying to like super serious up an otherwise not super terribly serious story. Like, it feels like it's having fun. It's clearly there's something going on in the background. Like, when you first open up the pages, like clearly there's something bad that is on the horizon, but it's like, hey, let's have some fun with this until we get there. And
Yes,
I like that.
I'm glad to hear that. Exactly. I'm a big fan of the movie. I mean, I've loved Greek mythology since I was a kid also, and it's like, before comic books, it feels like that's the world that you can kind of like get your fingers into and learn all the detail, because everybody's like, this person is married to this person, and this person is the dad of this person, and this hero fought this monster, but that monster is also related to this like, there's so much continuity to it. But the movie is it's a really fun movie. It's a very fun take, and it has its emotion, but it's a very fun, kind of oftentimes silly take. And when they asked me to do this, when Dynamite came and asked me to do this series, I knew that I wanted to make something that would appeal to the same qualities in the fans of the movie that the movie appeals to. That I wasn't interested yet in doing the like, oh right, here's the grim take on Hercules. All right, it's 15 years later. Athens is in ruins. The Greek city states have fallen. Meg's dead. Like, I don't, and Hercules has to wander the earth. Like, I'm not, that to me is not interesting. And also, as the father of 2 children, I wanted to write something that I could read to them or show to them and be like, this is gonna be fun. Like, this will be an adventure story. There'll be exciting things to it, but not something where I have to, do the thing where you're kind of cleaning things up as you read it, because there are things that are not quite appropriate, and also that especially after writing the Hades series, where I was writing a main character who's a villain who betrays everybody and is mean to people, to look at Hercules and say, like, what does Hercules stand for? He stands for generosity. He stands for compassion. He stands for protecting others. He stands for accepting others. These are values that I personally believe in. And so to write something where I feel like I'm kind of doing justice to those values and to the fun of the movie, rather than trying to like subvert everyone's expectations about Hercules. You thought you knew Hercules. Well, guess what? You were wrong, because it's more fun to me to say, like, you thought you knew Hercules and you did. And here's Hercules being the best version of himself and like having this adventure. And maybe there's still room there for a character to grow and for a character to face obstacles, to be in trouble or to make mistakes without being like, I'm going to lay waste to this thing. And I think part of the reason that Disney has been very easy to work with on this, very supportive, is that I think they recognize that what I'm trying to do is to do right by the original movie and by the things by the fans of that movie, the things that they like. The one thing I get asked about all the time that I was not able to fit in is the Muses and how they kind of sing the narration of the movie. And
I wanted to ask about that.
I feel like when I was writing it, I was like, I just don't have room to do right by them and to also tell this story I want to tell. But now I'm like, everybody's asked about it. I should have jettisoned some of my own stuff and just kept them in it, because they're like, it was one of those things where I'm like, I know I like them, but I didn't realize that people love their songs and love that they're in it.
Now, full disclosure, I was going to ask. I was totally going to ask. And it's because that is, of all the things, you think of all the millions and myriad of things that happened in that movie that one could recall from nothing. That was one of the probably 5 things that stuck out of my head.
Yeah.
Other than like the principal characters and everything like that, like I was like, oh yeah, the Muses, okay. And I was like, oh, I wonder if like maybe in like future issues would be like a little because sometimes comics they do the thing where like, oh hey, well you remember last week or or last month, and then have like maybe have like the Muses have like a little blur. But I was like, it would be very difficult to write what they do. So I wasn't even really bothered by the fact that they weren't there.
They're so to have them in it and not be able to hear them would be such a disappointment too. I might try to fit them in, somewhere, but I was to really do them in a way that to present them in a way that like does justice to what they're doing. Doesn't just have them up for a panel being like, and then this happened. They would have taken up a lot of kind of story space. And part of it is also I'm like, there's so many characters from Greek mythology that are so fantastic. And something that I did with Hades and I'm doing with this is not limiting myself just to the characters in the movie, but also bringing in, if it's a character from Greek mythology, then they might have a place in this. And it might be, and to put a spin on them that's similar to the spin that Disney put on the Hercules characters in the movie, where they're recognizable, but they're not exactly the orthodox version of the myth. And I'll admit I'll plead guilty to just wanting to like bring in tons of other Greek mythology characters at the expense of the Muses. I apologize. I'm sorry, Muses.
Well, it's something that I have learned a lot about in recent years in my own creative efforts, that like sometimes there's some things that don't work in certain medium versus like another one, and like the Muses are something that they work in the context of the animated movie on a page where you can't hear what they're singing, which to be fair, half of I don't even dare say more than half of their charm is that you can hear them singing.
Yes. But they sound so amazing. Yeah.
And it's easier to me, in my estimation, it's easier to write a character who is not singing or vocalizing in like some kind of a musical fashion, because I'll be brutally honest, unless like you have like an experience in doing it, I think it's difficult to do, like to write someone singing what they sing, which I imagine it wasn't even easy to write them for the movie.
No, I like to. In my other kind of jobs, I've every now and then dabbled in lyric writing for comedy songs, and it's tough to do it without the music, and it's tough to communicate to someone what the rhythm of the melody is without that music. So in the Hades series, one of the characters is Orpheus, who does play music in it, but it's always for jokes. It's always there's
Yeah.
so even if you don't kind of get what the melody is or what the rhythm is of it, you can still read the lyrics for jokes. But it's tough to do. But there's lots of I don't want people to just look at Hercules as the series where I couldn't pull off the Muses. There's lots of great stuff in there. There's lots of great things.
It's funny that this even comes up because I was having a conversation with Amanda Dybert, who is writing Darkwing Duck, and she said something that I had never thought about before, and it's that she was writing Liquidator. She said it's very difficult to write for Liquidator. She said that the people who wrote the show said the same thing because pretty much all of his dialogue is like commercial catchphrases. And it was something I never thought about as a kid watching the show. Like I was like, oh, this dude just sounds kind of goofy, but I like him. I didn't think about I really wasn't paying attention to the fact that, he's literally just a walking commercial. And I was like, that would be kind of difficult to write for in that situation. So I like, it was one of those things like when I like reading the first issue, I was kind of disappointed, but like at the same time, I was like, you know what? I don't know if this story actually needs that right now. Like if it would be cute if, to have, but at the same time, like, it would just, I respect the decision to be like, hey, if I can't, do this the justice it deserves, don't do it at all. Like I respect that stance because I would have done the same thing.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. And that emotional journey that you went on in seeing that the Muses weren't there and processing it, that's just a taste of the epic journey that you'll be taken on through the Hercules series, starting with issue 1.
Yeah. Well, and just to say too, like, that was something I was also really interested in because, like, you when you start this up, you set it up to be like stuff is on the way. There's already shenanigans happening. Wacky shenanigans that are funny. But like, can you give us without giving away too much? Can you give us a little tease of like what we can expect that's going to be kind of like the go-between before we get to that first page of issue 1?
So for anyone who hasn't read it, who's watching it, so the first page is a little bit of a like blip forward. We just see that Hercules he's at the bottom of a pit, he's in a dark place, and someone is kind of in caption boxes is kind of taunting him, that he thought he could do this. He's failed. He's just immortal. I'm trying to remember because the next couple issues will kind of start with similar teasers. I'm trying to remember exactly what the villain says on in which issue, but I'll spoil plenty of it, or I'll tease plenty of it. So the first issue ends after Hercules' first adventure, where he meets a character who is going to become a big supporting character throughout the series. The first issue ends with one of the gods being disappeared, not being there. And for the first few issues, Hercules is being tasked with gods with doing different kind of tasks, different jobs, basically cleaning up messes that they've created or pulling off jobs that they need done. And each time he finishes, he finds that god is gone. And it will become clear that to them that the gods seem to be being abducted one by one. Someone is literally kidnapping the gods of Olympus. And Hercules has his own suspicion of who that is. And the gods don't want to listen to him because he's not a god. He's just immortal. He's just a guy. He's super strong. They'll use him for jobs, but he's just a guy. And through he will eventually say this in a way that sounds dramatic and not but it's also not giving away stuff. So by the sixth issue, he will have discovered who the villain is, and will have confronted them, and will have failed, and will have to kind of deal, and will be put in a position where he's seemingly unable to do anything to save the day further, as literally all of reality, for reasons of this villain's machinations, is starting to collapse. And he has to kind of bring himself up out of that darkness that he's been hurled into, out of the lowest point, and manage to assemble the resources he needs to try and take on this villain again, if he can get through it. And there's going to be some negative consequences for some of the characters and positive consequences for some of the characters. It's a Disney story, so no one's going to be there's not. I don't want to do anything where things are genuinely very harrowing or disturbing, but it's a tough journey that he's going to be on, and it's going to take him kind of like holding to his principles to be able to get through it and eventually save the day. But so don't worry, it's not one of those things where there's a mystery and you find out on like the second to last page of the entire story what's going on. You'll find out who the villain is at that kind of midway point after it's been built up. Who's it going to be? I'm not going to say. I don't think, and I don't know that anyone's going to guess. We'll see. We'll see. The clues are kind of there, but I don't think anyone's going to figure it out. And along the way, Hercules is going to be encountering more characters from Greek mythology that he hasn't encountered before. There's going to be new allies and enemies that he's up against, and new challenges and things. And he's going to be constantly kind of, his heroism and his dedication to that heroism is going to be tested, just because things are going to get harder and harder for him, and there's a point. I just handed in the script for issue 9, and I know how the rest of the story goes, the last few issues, but I've been, working at, the broad strokes and you work at the details. And he's at a point now where he's going to have to literally kind of rediscover those principles again for himself, so that he can do what's right. And meanwhile, some of the other characters are having their own hero moments and things like that, and the gods have been brought low, so they need to get honest with themselves about things. Hopefully, my hope is that people will, when they meet the villain and when they see who it is, and they'll be like, oh, this is really cool. Like this is not what we expected, and it's a really cool thing. And hopefully they won't just be like, I don't know about this. But each of those the first couple issues, they have that kind of first page that's foreshadowing that Hercules is going to have this big, initially this big defeat when he comes face to face with the ultimate villain of the story for the first time, and in this story, and that there's real peril, real danger. But don't worry, I don't want anyone to worry that like I'm gonna pull anything tragic or anything like that. That's not my interest. The interest is fun. The interest is fun and excitement.
It's not gonna be like the night that Meg dies. For those Spider-Man. Those Spider-Man fans.
That's why we had to call this story the night that we couldn't tell you the title to the last page. Yeah, there's none of that. Meg is a character who Meg is a character who I've come to love too much to want anything. I only want to see her risen up. I don't want to see her anything bad happen to her. And it's funny, my mom is a very devoted reader of mine, and she'll pick up the books and she's like, don't let anything happen to these characters. Don't. And she's very protective of the characters that I'm writing whenever I'm writing them. So I have to do right by her. But
that's so cool.
There's a. She's a great mom. There's each of those characters from the movie, like Hercules and Phil and Meg. I want to really give them moments to kind of show what's cool about them, and to be heroes for a moment. No one in the book is an out and out, just kind of like silly, only comic relief character, and also nobody in it is a kind of humorless, only cool, not funny character. Yeah. And no one in it is a not cool kind of like the audience is supposed to think this character is boring character. And there's no one. Whenever I write a story, I want everyone to kind of feel like they got their fair shake. That each character got their chance to show the audience kind of what's interesting or special or cool about them. And hopefully I've pulled that off with this one. But yeah, don't worry. No one's throwing Meg off a bridge. No one, Phil isn't. Yeah. Phil isn't gonna save Hercules by jumping in front of a goblin glider and get taken in the back. Nothing like that. I mean, Disney owns it all. There's no reason. And that would be the most amazing moment if at the end, if it's like who's kidnapping the Greek gods? Oh, it's the Green Goblin. Like that'd be the craziest twist in the world.
One thing I wanted to ask, because I know we're over on time. I don't want to hold you too much longer.
We can do a little bit more. I know I had that moment in the middle where I had to run off and literally hand off a package. So I apologize.
No, you're okay. You're okay. What I'm curious, but you kind of teed me up for this. I'm curious. This doesn't really have as much to do with Hercules, but I'm curious to know, like, because you've been writing in comics, since before now. Like, I know you've done stuff for Marvel as well. How does it feel to have created what I feel is probably one of the funnier comic book meme moments that still gets referenced, like even as recent as last month.
This is I assume you mean this is the Sauron Spider-Man panel from Spider-Man the X-Men #2.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels I'm very divided on it, because on the one hand, I think it's really cool. I love that it's a moment from that book that when I was writing it, if there was any joke where I was not sure it was going to land with the audience, it was that joke. And I was so glad that that people took to it and really have repurposed it in that way. I think that there's something about feeling like you've contributed to the common culture of America, or whatever. But at the other hand, it's like, well, so many more people have seen it online than read that book. And it would have been, I'm like, there are many times where I'm like, oh, I wish people, everyone who saw this meme online, like bought a copy of the book.
Yeah,
then it would be the best-selling book in the country, so it's a bittersweet thing. But fans of mine have been really, really good about, if someone posts that panel, they'll, on the internet, they'll kind of like comment on it, mentioning me and the artist Marco Faia and Faila. I constantly mispronounce all of my artist names, and I feel terrible about it all the time. But
as the self-proclaimed butcher of names, I empathize.
Oh, good. And my last name is often mispronounced. You pronounce my name right, but most people often don't.
Okay.
So I'm like, I'm very sensitive to the last name mispronouncing, and I mispronounce. And all of my artists, I can never pronounce their names properly. I feel terrible. But but it's exciting to have. It's exciting to have anything that lives on. After the original work has kind of had its moment in the sun and then left. And so anytime I see it pop up online, it's exciting. And also that, I mean, to have something that I wrote that also, like, I love Spider-Man. Spider-Man's my favorite fictional character of all time. I love Sauron. He's, that technically pterosaurs are not dinosaurs, but he's the closest to like a dinosaur like villain that I think is good. I mean, Stegoron the Dinosaur Man is also in that storyline, but he's kind of a goofy character. Whereas Sauron, I think, I genuinely love as the villain. And so for it to be something that for people to really enjoy something that used characters that I really love, that was a joke that I enjoyed personally myself, but felt iffy about an audience registering. And that it makes that people use it to make a point that I agree with most of the time. They'll like, whenever a billionaire let's say orbits the Earth, spends millions of dollars so that he can orbit the Earth for an hour, and instead of feeding people or like educating people, the
criminal justice reform,
criminal justice, exactly,
housing,
climate work, anything like instead of doing that, and they use it for that reason. I'm like, yeah, well, I agree with that. That's a good way to, yeah, thank you. I feel like it would be different if I was like the way Jerry Conway has had to grapple with the Punisher logo being repurposed in a way that he does not approve of. Now, luckily, that didn't happen to me. So seeing something that I liked reappropriated in a way that I approve of, I'm like, oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wish that just want them to pick up the book. That's the only thing,
Well, I will definitely say, because this is something I like to do whenever I do these. I like to make sure that I put links to not just the stuff that we're here to talk about, but like other stuff that the person has worked on before, just to kind of give a bigger point in the direction of the body of work that they have done. So I will, for one.
Thank you. That was
find
a series.
A way to put that in there somewhere.
I appreciate it. It was from a series I did for Marvel years ago. I think it was like 2014 maybe, called Spider-Man the X-Men. It was a 6-issue miniseries, and with Spider-Man teaching some of the kids at the X school, and I really loved working. I mean, again, it was like and that was one where I probably hurt myself a little bit by the fact that I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to do this again. So 6 issues, I'm going to try to tell 6 stories, and every single one's going to have a Spider-Man villain and an X-Men villain teaming up together. And there was just so much stuff packed into it. But those characters I've loved for such a long time, and it was fun to say, okay, Spider-Man has this ethic that if you have power, you owe it to go out and use it to help people. And the X-Men have a different ethic, which is we are always endangered, and anytime we do anything, it puts us in the line of threat. And it's easy for Spider-Man, who can just take off his mask and be a regular person, to do these things when, say, like Eye-Boy or Glob Herman or No Girl, these characters who are physically so recognizably different, than the mass of people that. And it was very fun just to have those characters kind of bouncing ideas off each other while they were also fighting villains and cracking jokes and things like that. And I had such a good time writing this. It felt like I was able to get so much of the stuff I dreamed about when it comes to writing comic books into those books. And like I got to take them to Mojo World and have the X babies and little baby Wolverine. I think maybe my second favorite moment in that series after that Soren one is when at the time it was during the period when Wolverine was dead and now he's back, of course. But when it was Spider-Man having in silent panels having to break the news to X baby Wolverine that the original Wolverine had died, and that baby Wolverine cries and he sniffs and it says sniffed, and that's the sound effect. And I was like, this is everything I wanted to do in comics right here, is have this kind of like touching moment, but then there's a sound effect joke, at the end of it, so.
Well, I could definitely say, for one, it was a fantastic read. I feel like that is one of the hallmarks of your writing, is just the ability to kind of flip it around, like to not like you can have like a little moment, but like you can also at the same time get a little bit of a chuckle in there too, just to be like, oh, okay, all right, now let's get back to the fun.
Well, that's life, Life's sad sometimes, it's funny sometimes, and often at the same time, and one of the great things about comics is it can do it all. You can do everything, and because you're mixing words and images, you can layer multiple things on top of each other. They can happen, multiple meanings can be happening simultaneously, and the audience gets to pick them up. And whatever you're doing on the page, the audience has to kind of tie it together in their imaginations. They're the ones tying each panel together and imagining the voices that go with the dialogue. And so it's such a the more you put into it, the more the audience gets to take out of it and gets to put themselves into it. And it's a medium that I've always just loved as a reader and as a writer. If I could draw, I'd have everything, but unfortunately, God only gives you so many talents.
That's a common phrase in my house growing up as a kid. God doesn't give with both hands.
yeah, exactly.
So it's something that is stuck with me ever since being a child. It's like, hey, I could do one thing. I have the one thing, and we're just gonna lean into that.
Yeah.
And that's all we got. That's all we got. But I highly recommend what you're doing on this Hercules series. It is something that and I've joked about this before, but it comes from a place of love. That as a 41-year-old guy reading comics, that I suddenly find myself in this era of modern comics where all of my favorite things from when I was a child, or like even up into being a teenager, are kind of making this massive kind of comeback. And it's like, I never thought in 2024 I would be saying that, hey, have you checked out any of these Disney villains comics? They are really freaking good. I never thought I'd say it.
I'm in the same, but I'm 42, and it's the same thing. I'm like, all this stuff that I thought I would have, I thought that like my parents, I would have to let go of my childish things when I grew up, and I haven't. And it means that there's I don't know, it means that the people who really love the stuff that they grew up with can have the chance to pick it up and kind of infuse some of themselves in it, or take it to do new things, and I think if you're doing it in a way that kind of continues the serving what the original material is intended for, then it can be really good, and it can be really fun. And that's what I'm trying to do with this Hercules series. It's like this is a movie I loved when I was like an adolescent, when I saw it in the theaters. It's a or a teenager, I guess, by then, and it's Greek mythology is something I've loved since I was a kid. I mean, Greek mythology will be around forever, but to be able to take it and say, okay, how do I put a little bit of myself and my sensibility in it in a way that continues the sensibility and the tone and the character work that the movie set forward And that's the fun of working with a pre-existing property is, how do I do it justice while also adding a little bit of my own thinking into it. And I hope that that readers will think that I've been doing that successfully with Hercules, because I think I have been, but I'm partial. That's the but I've been enjoying it. So but yeah, I really hope that people who are fans of the movie feel that way, that this is doing it justice. I hope people who aren't familiar with the movie can still feel like they can pick it up, or people who haven't seen it in a long time, like you were saying, that they can still pick it up and say like, oh, okay, this fits with what I remember, and now and maybe it'll send them back to watch the original movie again. I don't know. And but there's yeah, most of all, I just hope that when people read it, they have fun reading it. That they're like, this is funny. These are fun adventures. I'm enjoying these characters, and I want to see what else they're up to next month. That's the ideal situation, the ideal reaction.
Well, I think I can only speak for myself, but I can definitely say I think you've done a fantastic job.
Thank you.
So yeah, I will just say it again. There'll be links in the description below, pinned comment below. A lot of you who've been watching my channel for a while, you probably know the drill by this point, but make sure you go check those out. And yeah, I think you said you've already got you're already you've already turned in issue 9 of 12. So I mean, you've clearly gotten deep into this. So
I know where it's going. I know what's happening in it. I know that what else. So, but it's something that I'll be sad when I'm finished working on it. I'm excited that I'll still get to see the art coming in and the book coming out, because it'll mean the experience will last a little bit longer. But it's always there's the excitement of embarking on a project, and there's the excitement of completing it. But then it's always like, oh, that was fun when I was writing like issue 6 and 7, and I knew that I was deep into it, but I still had a lot left to get to experience. A lot more to love of it. But yeah, I hope people like it. It's a story that how can I say it in a way that I haven't said it before? I don't know. I'll just say the same thing, I guess. I don't know. It's a story that I've been having so much fun writing, and I hope people have a lot of fun. I hope people they always say, they're like, if you have half as much fun reading it as I had writing it, but I'm still gonna say, I hope you have more fun reading it than I had writing it, because you didn't have to do any work. But but then it will still be a lot of fun. Yeah.
You guessed it, obligatory channel outro time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. Clicking that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell ensures that you get more videos just like this one, and you don't miss any of my other content that I drop throughout the week, plus my live streams every Thursday and Saturday. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click that like button, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.